Welcome to the Sort of Sure podcast, where doubt looms, fear whispers, and the only way forward is through. I'm Samar Carbo, and if you've ever felt like you're just sort of sure about what you're doing, you're not alone. This is where we face the uncertainty, push past the hesitation, and keep going anyway. So take a breath, step in, and let's move forward together. Hello and welcome to the Sort of Sure podcast. As always, this is Samar Carbo, and I'm your host today, and every day, except last week. Can we talk about it a minute? So, last week, you saw one of the major pitfalls of being a do-it-yourselfer podcaster. I was down and out, as half of the U.S. seems to be. And as I am a one-man band and a person who seldom asks for help, I did not have the energy to get an episode together for you, and I sincerely apologize for that. I will do everything in my power to change up how I edit and maybe record so that I can make this process a little bit better for all of you listeners out there. We've been growing very steadily, and I love to see that, and I am not here to let you down. So let's charge forward together. But today we have Drumm McNaughton, a veteran, a titan of education, and the host of the Changing Higher Ed podcast. I can't describe him any better than he can, so we're going to go ahead and get this episode started. Let's have a listen.
My name is Drumm McNaughton. I'm the president and CEO of the Change Leader, Inc., and we are a management consultancy that focuses on higher education and specifically in the areas of governance, accreditation, change management, academic realignment, and mergers and acquisitions.
You seem to exude a certain confidence. Is that just a natural thing from you, or have you gained that over time?
I think there's probably very few people, for example, Jesus Christ, who had that confidence coming in. We're all on a learning journey, so, there's the 4 different stages of learning. You've got your unconscious incompetent. You don't know what you don't know. Then you've got your conscious your conscious incompetent. You finally are starting to figure out what you don't know. It doesn't feel real good. You work hard, you become the conscious competent. And then after a while, when things just start to come naturally and you're able to see things from much more of a holistic perspective, you become the unconscious competent. And I believe in many parts of my life, that's where I am. And then there's others that I am the unconscious incompetent or the conscious incompetent. Take your pick.
Of course. And I know from your intro page on your website and from our previous conversation that you are a veteran as well. Thank you for your service. Have we had sort of your confidence journey coming from that as well?
The transition from being in the military was a very challenging transition. I had lived in the military life and, growing up down in Panama in the Canal Zone, which was like a little U.S. colony. Everything was very controlled, run by the government, etc. Going into the military, very structured, and then getting out and seeing how things were structured totally different, and in my perception, completely unstructured. It was a difficult transition to understand how corporate America thinks, works. I'll give you a great example. I walked into a grocery store, after getting out in San Francisco, and there are 15 different varieties of ketchup. Frankly, that was overwhelming because we could choose one variety, maybe two varieties in different sizes. Trying to make decisions coming out of that was something I had to learn.
It's not something we think about, those of us who have been just insanely marketed to and had that explained to us. This is the best kind or this is the best kind. We may not even see ones that we don't buy, but you came out of a very controlled, very specific environment, and I'm sure you had some choice paralysis around that. Was that life in general, or was that specific to the grocery market?
Oh, I think it was life in general. I mean, it was, there were multiple things that were overwhelming because, completely underexposed or never having been exposed to those type of things, it was having to learn a whole different framework, and that can go down and really impact who you view yourself to be as a person.
So you came back from your military service, and was that when you got into higher ed, or did the training start before then?
Actually, it's interesting that you asked the question in that way, because I never figured on going into higher education. I knew I enjoyed teaching. The most beneficial and what's the word I'm looking for? Fulfilling experiences I had while I was in the Navy. Everyone says, "Oh my gosh, you're a pilot. That must have been great." Where I got my best feelings from were teaching other people how to fly. It was that instructor, that teaching, helping others that made me feel far more fulfilled than doing anything else. So I knew I had that in me. And, my mother was a teacher. My grandmother on my mother's side was a teacher. So, I had that quote gene in me. But when I got out of the Navy, I worked in the industry. I worked with Dell Computer. I worked with Computer Sciences Corporation. And it wasn't until I met with a friend of mine who did career exploration with senior executives. And he said to me, after putting me through a 4-hour interview and a battery of tests, etc., he says, two things. One, you need to go back and get a graduate degree. Your degree from the Naval Academy in physics is great, but it didn't really, quote, prepare you for what the commercial sector and what the public sector does. And the second was, you should be working in change management. Well, he was right on both of those recommendations. So I went back to graduate school and I discovered that education gene in me, and after graduating, I started doing teaching and found that I love it. So that was the change management. It was a lot of change management that I needed to do with myself, and I did that over the years, but also too in helping others to change, and now in the consulting arena, helping institutions to change. If you read any of the Eastern philosophy literature, it talks very strongly about getting internal guidance through your intuition and then using your willpower to make that happen. You've got to have that guidance, the direction that you want to go, and then you've got to use your willpower to execute it. We have a prayer that I say to myself: I will reason, I will act, but guide thou, God, my reason, will, and activity to the right thing I should do. So what I'm trying to do is get my will attuned to the divine will. And when I am able to do that, I can move forward very smoothly I wouldn't say without effort. There's always effort involved. But I can move forward with the assurance that I am doing God's will for what happens. And it sometimes will tell me, no, don't go that way. That's not what needs to happen. It's like, okay, no problem, boss. So I think that's a little bit better way of at least how I would explain it for me. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a much more, how I would describe, empowered way of looking at life than a lot of people have at their disposal. So then I ask, you've got this, you mentioned a prayer. Do you have other habits that keep you in alignment in your life?
Absolutely. I meditate morning and evening, always. I don't miss. I go to our church regularly to keep that attunement that I need to be able to move forward. If you look at life as a series of experiences and challenges designed to help you grow, it takes away some of that, what you talk about as imposter syndrome. It's like, okay, this is the next step in my unfoldment. And it's like, great. I don't want to say bring it on because sometimes it's not a lot of fun, but it's the next step that I need to take, and I will do it. I will reason, I will act, but guide down my reason, will, and activity to the right thing I should do.
Oh, that's great. And obviously, being a churchgoer, there is one book that I can think of that you would probably reference pretty often. But are there other books that you picked this up from, or teachers that have helped you sort of gain this clarity?
There have been. There's a lot of, quote, New Age folks out there, but I have been a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda for 35 years at this point. He wrote a book called Autobiography of a Yogi, which is in the top 100 spiritual books for the 20th century. He came over from India in 1920. I have followed his path. I followed his writings. He's written multiple books. And frankly, that has been the anchor in my life for many years.
That's lovely. And I'm just looking this gentleman up as we're talking. And yes, very easy to find, even if you misspell it. Very easy to find. Paramahansa Yogananda. And that's super cool. I'll definitely include, along with information to your podcast, information to follow up on what's going on with him. So while we're on that topic, certainly you've got a podcast now. I believe it's focused on higher ed, but can you kind of give us an introduction to the podcast itself? What sort of subjects you talk about?
Glad to. The podcast is named Changing Higher Ed, and it's targeted at university presidents, senior executives, and boards about the latest things that are going on in higher education. And we typically have as guests presidents, board members, senior leadership in higher ed, whether it be from universities or associations associations associated with higher education. We've been really fortunate to have a lot of great guests. Today we released our 256th episode. It's been going on now for about 6 years. And frankly, I love doing the podcast. Not only do I get to meet really neat people and pick their brains, I couldn't ask for a better graduate degree in what's going on in higher education and how these experts are transforming our industry to where it needs to go.
And that's going to be hugely helpful. There are, I haven't done not all the studies, but there are certainly some higher ed people. I know my father was in higher education for just about 50 years before retirement and after. As you well know, the education bug never leaves. So that'll be great for those who want to consume better and more educational content. And there is one big question I always like to ask. Do you have advice for someone who is currently in the throes of imposter syndrome or those big self-doubt moments, who may be in higher ed themselves but don't know how to move forward or move up?
I think what I would say is imposter syndrome is a self-manufactured fault. You have everything inside of people, men, women. We all have inside of us everything we need to know and do. The question is, can you tap into that knowledge? That's where, for me, meditation comes into play, or in other vernacular, for Christians, it's prayer and contemplation. I mean, I did my doctoral work, my research work on the decision-making processes of executives that meditate. And I talked to multiple disciplines of people that I call meditators, but by their own practice, they call it something different. So you've got that knowledge inside of you. Sometimes it's just a being of matter guided you to a particular reference book or whatever. Sometimes it's just understanding that the imposter syndrome is just that. It is an imposter. It is not who we truly are. And you're just being presented with the next step in your unfoldment, whether it is to get over imposter syndrome, to get over another potential, I don't want to call it a character defect because we all have the perfect character inside of us. It's just different. So the biggest barrier for people is learning how to trust themselves. Not in an egotistic way as bang your chest and go, I am the greatest, with your fist upturned. It's like, no, that's not it. It's trusting your authentic self to understand that each step along the way is part of your own growth and unfoldment. Sometimes growth is messy. Sometimes growth is not fun. But guess what? You can go through it now or you can go through it at another time, but you're going to go through it.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much. But I really appreciate you being on the podcast and,
My pleasure. Glad to have been of service to you, Samar, and I wish you all the best of luck with the podcast and life going forward.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go hug my brand new baby so I can give her mom a break. You have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, sir. You too.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Wowee. I tell you, every time we have a teacher on the podcast, they're dropping so much knowledge, and I wonder sometimes if they even know it. We went from the 4 stages of learning, from unconscious incompetence all the way up to unconscious competence, all the way down to the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. We really ran the gauntlet with this one. And I want to really highlight something that he said there. Your biggest barrier is learning how to trust yourself. We spend so much of our lives trusting other people, trusting our leaders, trusting our friends, our tribe, people in authority figures that may not have any real leadership capability at all, but we trust them. And the way that we get past that is to trust ourselves. He also said your authentic self is what you have to trust, to understand that each step in your life is to your growth. Maybe it's not fun, but it's for your growth. And I also liked the idea that he said of unfoldment, of our lives just unfolding before us rather than happening. Tells me that it's already there and it's already thought through. It's just happening for us in a linear way. If you have a story to share and you would like to be on the podcast, please reach out to me at sortofsurepod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your story. And additionally, if something that was said in today's podcast really resonated with you, or you just really like the show, please feel free to leave a 5-star review and share it with a friend so that the podcast can grow and we can achieve our mission of providing a safe place for those who feel a little self-doubt. Well, I've jawed on enough at the end here. I think you deserve a break. So I'll see you next Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern on the Sort of Sure podcast. Later days.